And I'm muted. Let's start this again. Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel and getting into the chat and letting me know how you guys are thinking and feeling. On today's show, we're going to be going over David Ornstein's comments around Arsenal's January transfer window or lack thereof. He has kind of said, basically what he has said is that Arsenal are making no signings. And that will not surprise some people, but I think it will frustrate quite a few because we've had many conversations around whether or not our attack is good enough, whether or not we have enough goals in the team, whether or not we have a plan B. There's been a lot of talk around Ivan Toney potentially coming to the club in January and Pedro Neto, and David Ornstein has all but shut down those rumors. So we need to talk about it, as well as Arteta's update on Saka, Trossard, and Saliba, who were all out of international duty due to injuries and may or may not play against Chelsea. So we're going to get into it. Make sure you guys, again, are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I do apologize for being a couple of minutes late. I was trying to get the Chelsea preview up on Patreon, and at the moment it is uploading and it is at 20%. It has been a nightmare trying to get this thing up. So I hope you guys, if you guys are patrons, that you enjoy it because honey, it was difficult. It was hard. But I just realized my light's not on. Is that better? Is that better? Yeah. So it was kind of a nightmare trying to get it up. But nevertheless, in about 10-15 minutes, I'm gonna press go on that and it'll be up for patrons. And if you're a patron, you can watch this after. Channel news is rolling around on the bottom. I didn't update it from yesterday, but obviously the preview for Chelsea is going to be up today. You'll have the live watch along and player ratings tomorrow, and pre-match vibe starts an hour before kickoff. An hour before kickoff, we go over the team news and all of that, and then that leads straight into the watch along. And then we do player ratings immediately following that. And Gunnar Lee is going to be a guest on the show for the post-match show that is actually going to be on Patreon as well. So enough of that nonsense. Let's see who's here. Let's see who's there. Ansa says, talk by who though? What? What are we talking about? Tell me what you're talking about. Boy says, give me Patino. He doesn't have to be registered. Chosen One says, just by the way, about the attack, Saka is on pace for a 20 and 10 season. Of course he is, and he's giving away penalties at this stage to other teammates. So we know he's on it. Boy says, I'm delighted we aren't getting Toney. And Arsenal Adventure says, Ornstein said no January signings. And Seawalder says, really like Gunnar Lee. I think you guys will enjoy the show. Obviously, I'll put a clip out here and there on YouTube, but the full show for basically a Chelsea post-match show will be on Patreon. And I would love you guys to join me over there. But if you guys don't, no worries. You guys know we'll do tons of content on here. Lei says, I'm glad we already know there are going to be no signings. That way we can at least relax and not kill ourselves. I don't know. It's like, just put me out of my misery ahead of time. And the thing about January windows is I think we've come to, weirdly as a fan base, expect us to get somebody every single window. No matter if we have solutions within the team or not, it feels like as a fan base, because other teams are buying players, that we feel like every single window we're going to buy someone. And historically, Arsenal have been a very quiet team during the January transfer window. Last window was different because we were in a title race. We've spent lots of money over the summer. So I am not surprised to hear this information, especially following how we got the David Raya deal done. We basically did a Klarna deal with Brentford, y'all. Like, we have FFP problems. No matter what people are saying, we do. David Ornstein has basically alluded to the fact that we ain't got no money, okay? So unless we're selling players, it's going to be tough. But let's go ahead and get into the mess, okay? Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Like I said, it really helps the channel grow. This is what David Ornstein has said. He says, Arsenal do not have much budget or desire to do significant business in January. Arsenal do not have much budget or significant to do significant business, and they don't have the desire to do it either. So basically he's saying we don't have the money. And Arsenal probably feel like they can deal with what they have internally. I don't think we can question KSE's willingness to do so, since taking full control of the club. It's more of a matter of what the FFP rules enabled them to do. The David Raya deal going through as a loan with an option to buy illustrated that Arsenal are sailing close to the wind. So again, despite some very like big accounts saying, no, 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 we don't have FFP problems. It's not about having problems. It's just, we probably are just a little bit close to the line and we need to balance the books. And Arsenal this summer, do you guys remember at the beginning of the summer where there were all these reports coming out about Arsenal potentially selling close to like 100 million pounds worth of players or above that? And like those reports kept coming out. I do think Arsenal thought that they would get more money for the players that we were going to sell than they actually did. I would have anticipated, like, you know, maybe the Tierney situation of not even be able to get like a single bid in for him probably took the club by surprise. So, like, if you thought that you were going to spend 200,000 pounds in the summer window, with also the idea in the back of the mind that you're going to get almost 100,000 pounds back or more than that, to only recoup like 70 million max, like, I have to look back at my notes because I had it in my notes during the summer. It was like 76 or some nonsense like that. Like, we didn't get anywhere near where we were supposed to get. So that means that Arsenal are going to be in a situation where they're going to have to balance the books. And so selling players and waiting till the summer, waiting till the next period, whatever, is probably what Arsenal are going to have to do. They will have a plan as to how they wish to proceed. Most probably, as things stand, that will start with the striker. And this is more talking towards the summer. We've all seen the names linked. There's also a long-standing interest to provide backup and competition for Bukayo Saka, potentially depth at left center back and left back cover. Again, in not very surprising, the left center back, left back cover. A little surprising. I'll tell you why. But with the inclusion of Timber, we've figured out what we're going to do at right back and right-sided center back. That's why Timber was brought in. David Ornstein said during the summer that he's being brought in as a right back. I know that he started off at left back, but I do genuinely feel like that's mostly because, you know, Zinchenko was not fit to start the season. And you know, I don't think you're going to buy a right-sided center back or a right back to play left back. And that was always your plan. Timber just is such a phenomenal player and such a great talent that he was able to stand in there. But he was bought as depth on the right-hand side, which I think we all said during the summer was important because we had lost Tommy. And losing Tommy was a big reason why, like, we did not do what we needed to do last season, because Saliba got the injury and then Tommy was out. So at the end of the last season, everybody was talking about a right back. You know, right back, right side of center back. We got that. Just because Timber played left back during Zinchenko's absence doesn't mean that that's exactly what we wanted to do. Now, what I do question a little bit in this, and this is kind of getting away from the attack conversation, but we'll go back to it, is Kivior was brought in last January and plays both of those positions. He plays left-sided center back and left back, and he's getting no minutes. Like, he's getting very little minutes at this stage. And I just don't believe that that's an average player. I just don't. When he first came in, Arteta said that he's going to change the way that we play. You don't say that about a player that you're going to give like no minutes to. And Kivior looks like a quiet player. Maybe he's a little bit on the shyer side. So, you know, maybe he's like kind of like reserved and a little bit on the outskirts of the team, whatever. But he's not getting enough minutes for us to really see what this player can do. And for center back and left back to still be on the agenda after buying Kivior is a red flag to me, because we spent 25 million on a player that's highly rated, was highly rated in Italy, highly rated by every Polish journalist and everybody and whatever who knows about Polish players, played in the World Cup, started in the World Cup, is playing for his country every single time international break comes around. But this guy is not getting minutes at Arsenal. And I don't know why that is, but I tend to feel like it's more about the manager's lack of implementing that player into the team because of lack of trust rather than the player not having any quality. So left-sided center back and left back still being on the agenda worries me a little bit. It does, but I do think we need another center back. So, it's probably not going to happen in January, but hopefully it'll happen in the summer. Now, what does this mean? Like, it's just a normal, it's like the typical situation with Arsenal where I know that they want to be very careful about bringing players into the team, spending in January because they always have big plans for the summer. I'm sure next summer will be no different than the summer that just passed, where they have a big plan for what they want to do to move the team forward. And buying players in January does change how those plans work out for you. I think that's why you end up going for a Jorginho and a Trossard instead of like overspending or, whatever on other players, because, if you buy, if you buy Caicedo in January, you don't get Declan Rice. And I know that we wanted Caicedo, but I wonder if it was more like, well, we couldn't get him, whatever. Our number one target is going to be available to us in the summer. Let's not overspend on anybody else. Let's bring in Jorginho, who we know we can get on a short-term deal, and it's not going to stop us from bringing in Declan Rice in the summer. Because we had already started working on that in January. Like, by the time January rolled around, we knew Declan Rice was already like a number one target. And then you bring in Trossard, who's not going to stop you from bringing in another attacker because he costs so little. Like, it's not going to it affect you that much. So that was different for Arsenal in that circumstance. But usually Arsenal don't typically go out into the market in January. And so this January will probably be that. And so we'll be looking at players like Kai Havertz and Nketiah and Jesus and asking the question whether or not these players are good enough to help us get to where we want to be, which most of us are saying win trophies. Are these striking options, center forward options enough? Because our striker situation has been spoken about a lot. And I want to pull up this video from Gary Neville, because although I'm not a big fan of his in terms of like, he's not my favorite pundit, and I think he doesn't really have the ability to be unbiased with certain teams and stuff like that, I don't think he was necessarily wrong in this circumstance. So I want to pull this up for you guys and see what you guys think about this.
And I just think of this listening, not through personal experience, I'm never a striker, but what I didn't used to like and what I used to like as a defender, but also listening to Sir Alex Ferguson and his coaches and my coaches with England over all those years. And it always used to be that strikers have to make runs across the defender, that if it's on the other side of the pitch and it's getting crossed to the back post, you make that run into the back post. On a corner, on that second ball that's getting flicked on, you've got to get in at that back post. And immediately on that chance at the end, it just hit me. Because I just think of Ian Wright starting in and around the 6-yard box on the goalkeeper, because I used to mark Ian Wright on corners, and he was a nightmare. But he'd always just pull around to the back post to make sure that if that ball got sort of just glanced on, which it does, and Arsenal are looking for that, they've been looking for it all game, that you're there and you're in at the back post, and he wasn't there, he was hanging out, and he just hadn't made that run. And Jesus, when he gets that chance, when he sort of robs Maddison, these are big moments in the game, these are big things, and you just got to be on the move. You've got to be sniffing, smelling. I used the word anticipate, all those three words I used, and Arsenal just haven't got that in this game. Look, I really like this Arsenal team, and they could go on and win a title or finish second and have a great season and win trophies without that type of player. But it became obvious in this game that was missing. It became obvious to me that was missing, and I think it's something that I would point out. Alan Smith pointed out, and he knows far more about striking and instinct than I do.
So yeah, that was just a little clip from Gary Neville's like podcast, and he does them after the game, and that was after the Spurs game. And I think that's where, for me, a striker, that game was the game that made me feel like a striker is something that we just cannot ignore any longer, because the statistics that I saw between Eddie and Jesus after that game were shocking to me. And I said this in the post-match show, that there's not a big enough gap between Gabriel Jesus and Nketiah for me in terms of, how many goals we score when Jesus is on the pitch versus how many goals we score when Nketiah is on the pitch. I think a lot of the differences that we see between Jesus and Nketiah is maybe in chance creation and how it looks, but ultimately, like, we still struggle to score the easy goals. I think that's what really stands out to me is the easy goals we don't get, the goal mouth scrambles, the little tap ins off of cutbacks, things like that, we don't really get. And when we're in stressful situations, like we were at the back end of last season and like we were against Spurs, we weren't clinical. So, yeah, we look good and we create a lot of chances against somebody like PSV, or, we create enough against Bournemouth. But in those types of games, like Gary Neville was talking about there, you just kind of need a striker to put the ball in the back of the net. And we don't necessarily have that. And so going into the January window and already knowing that we're not going to get that, we're going to need our players to be a lot better than they've been in the first 8-9 games. Now, it's early days in the season. Like, it's not like the season is over. It's not like we can't get better from here. I think one of the biggest things that we have to remember is that Gabriel Jesus and Saka and Martinelli have only played 14 minutes together this season. So, and this is a group of players that have scored 40 goals last season. So it could just be as simple as getting Gabriel Jesus back in the team. He will help us create more chances and create more chances for our goal scorers in Saka and Martinelli. But that won't change the fact that when we need a striker to score a goal mouth scramble, get on the back post and hit the ball in the back of the net, header off of a corner, we're not going to have that player in our team because they don't exist in our team unless they're hiding somewhere. You guys can let me know. But it's one of those. And I want to read you guys what Mikel Arteta said about the number 9 position, as I found it to be quite interesting how he viewed it. And he's being asked quite a bit now about a number 9, a number 9. What could this give to you? You and both Chelsea and Arsenal are struggling to, score goals, it seems like they're struggling to score goals. Would a number 9 help? Would somebody clinical help? Blah, blah, blah. And this is what Arteta said. And I thought that this was kind of interesting. I'm not going to lie. He said that on the benefits of not having an out and out striker in the team. So these are about the benefits. He says, I think having players with different qualities give you different options. And it is always related to the opponent, what behaviors they have and what other players you have around the number 9. If you have midfielders as wingers, so midfielders as wingers, if you have Trossard and Vieira, that's what he's saying. If you have midfielders and ESR, if you have midfielders as wingers coming infield, a 9 that wants to come infield, and basically like a static striker, a tap-in striker, and attacking midfielders that are more holding midfielders, you don't have any threat. So a good example of that exact scenario is how we maybe played against Lens. I don't know. When we had scenarios where I think against Lens for a certain amount of time, we had Vieira and Jesus and Trossard, and we had Havertz who was doing whatever, and then we had Rice. It was like we didn't have as much threat. We didn't, no Saka. He put Vieira in. Vieira and Trossard, they both want to come in field. And Jesus is not going to run off the center backs. He wants to receive the ball to feet and dribble, create space in that way. So we didn't have a vertical threat. We didn't have players that wanted to spread the pitch out and create space. And so we saw that against Lens, like the exact situation that he's saying is exactly like something that we've seen. Players you have around the number 9. If you have midfielders as wingers coming in field, a 9 that wants to come in field, yeah. And he says you don't have any threat. We have a 9 that wants to come forward, attacking midfielders, are constantly threatening the last line, proper wingers, then it becomes a different threat. So essentially, when you have Saka and Martinelli who are proper wingers, and then you have somebody like Gabriel Jesus that wants to come forward, meaning he wants to be like involved in the play, and attacking midfielders in Havertz and Odegaard that are constantly threatening the last line and, making runs and things like that, then it becomes a different threat. So basically, he's advocating for the way that we play versus, having a different style of play that includes a number 9. Now, what I will say is from Arteta's perspective, my question would be, so what if you had Saka and Martinelli in a proper number 9, like somebody that can do some of the Gabriel Jesus stuff, but ultimately gives you more threat in behind, somebody fast, somebody that can hold the ball up, and somebody that gives you a true threat in the box. That's what I would want to know. He says you have players in the last line that can progress the play. We have players in the last line that can link those pockets and make runs that attract the central defenders. It depends a lot on the qualities of the players. You can't just isolate the 9. So essentially, like, the way that we play doesn't allow for you to really stop one player and stop our attack. That's what he's saying. That's a benefit of not having a number 9, is kind of like how we did with Holland. We basically isolated him out of the game, and their attacking, Manchester City's attack became null and void. Once we took Holland completely out of the game, they weren't able to really do anything beyond that. He says you can't just isolate the 9. You have to see the whole thing, how he connects and what kind of threats and things that you can do. If you don't have a big number 9 inside the box, you lose something. If you're going to start crossing over your fullbacks, you're going to probably have an issue. But there are many ways to attack, and depending on the opponent, maybe the option is better than the other. So he's saying it all depends. Basically, it all comes down to the opponent and what type of team you're playing. I think the way that we play currently beats 95% of teams in the Premier League. Genuinely, that's how I feel. I think if you play our best 11 and you have Jesus and Saka and Martinelli playing, we can beat 95% of the teams in the league. We are in the top 4 comfortably. Where it becomes a little bit more of like a question is when the stress is on and we just kind of need an easy goal. Do we have somebody that can get us an easy goal? A header, goal mouth scramble, tap in, somebody that can give us a plan B in terms of hold up play, somebody you can kick it up to and just hold the ball. Like, do we have those options in games where we're not as dominant as we usually would be, or we're struggling a little bit? Right now, we kind of have to have the perfect scenario in order to get shit done. And that for me has been what has made me feel like it would be nice to have a striker in the team. Now, how Havertz fits into all of this really makes it a lot more interesting, because if you say you need somebody to hold the ball up, you kind of have that in Havertz. If you say you want a number 9 that can come forward and link play and stuff like that, he can do that as well. So maybe Arteta was looking at that as a situation to bring in some of the qualities of a traditional number 9 without sacrificing the other things in our game that makes us as good as we are. So I find the entire thing really interesting. And even though I am disappointed about the fact that we may not get anybody in January, finding internal solutions is what's most important now. And I'm looking at the 3 center forward options that we have, and I'm like, how can we get the most out of these 3 in order to reach our goals? That's where we're at now. Andrew says, I don't think getting an out and out quality striker would fit in. We just need upgrades, but a striker would be good to have as a plan B. Jordan says, Ornstein doesn't know everything. Why would the club expose what their intentions are in the January market? It's the same reasons why we knew in January that Rice was our number 1 target. It's the same reason why we knew we were going after Rice in the summer. Like, things get exposed. Like, I think the idea that the club wants everything to be hush hush and quiet is a little bit like, how do we know anything? We knew we were going after Jesus before the season even ended, the season prior. Like, Arsenal reveals certain information because they just do. And, I feel like in circumstances like this, what usually happens is, Ornstein is pretty reliable. So what I would say, like, pretty reliable is 95% of the time he's on point, just like he was when he said Havertz was going to play in the 8 role and Rice was going to play in the 6. People said he wasn't reliable and he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he was right. He was right. And so my thing is can't always be he's saying something that I don't want to hear, so he's not reliable. But when he says things that I want to hear, like Arsenal have put in 100 5 million pound bid for Declan Rice. He's the best guy out there. So it can't just be whenever we don't hear something that we want to hear that he's not reliable anymore. And why would Arsenal want anybody to know what our plans are? Well, we basically let everybody know that we were getting Rice like in January. We knew that before the season even ended. So it's not like Arsenal are really that hush hush about what they do in the market. Deadstone says Ornstein knew nothing about Timber, but he knew everything about Rice, didn't he? So again, like, I do think it really just comes down to, especially in this fan base, is Ornstein becomes a fraud the minute we don't like what we're hearing. So we want somebody in January, so he's saying something that I don't like, so he's not telling the truth. Something else that had already kind of come out, but from multiple sources, like especially people that are like super connected, is that a lot of the news around Tony and Neto were actually being pushed by their agents anyway. So that heavily aligns with what Ornstein is saying, is that Arsenal aren't particularly desperate to bring in a number 9 or bring in any significant signings in January. And the Ivan Toney and Pedro Neto stuff was actually being pushed by their agents. So it can't always just be when Ornstein says something that I don't like, it's not true anymore. You know, we know he's pretty reliable. And we also know that we could barely get like, just put the puzzle pieces together, y'all. How does Arsenal have money to go out there and get Ivan Toney when we couldn't even buy David Raya and we haven't sold anyone? Can somebody explain that to me, how that makes sense? So Ornstein is a fraud. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So how are Arsenal going to buy Ivan Toney for 60 million or Pedro Neto for 60 million? If we couldn't buy Raya in the summer, we had to Klarna that deal. And, you know, he's like, do you guys see what I'm saying? Like, the puzzle pieces are kind of coming together here. And even if you don't think Ornstein is very reliable, if you put 2 and 2 together, Arsenal, they couldn't even buy Raya. So what makes you think that 6 months later, they're just going to magically have the money to buy Ivan Toney? We have to sell somebody, but it's very difficult to sell players in January still. Boy says, we got a goalkeeper on loan because we are out of money. If you guys want signings, then name a player to sell. It cannot be Havertz because his contract was signed 4 months ago. A cow says, Ornstein only talks about things everyone knows, but lies big. Thought he said Partey was being sold. No, he never said that. Actually, Fabrizio Romano was the one that was saying that Arsenal were open to moving Thomas Partey on, but they were only going to accept a certain fee. So he never said we were going to sell Thomas Partey. But everybody knows that Arsenal were open to selling him this summer. Multiple sources said that. It's weird. As soon as Ornstein says something that people don't like to hear, he immediately becomes a fraud. But when he's talking about things that we want to hear, like we're going to spend 100 million on Declan Rice and we're leading the race, everybody is saying, oh, this guy he's the GOAT. He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT. Come on, y'all. Let's be serious. Ansa says, I'll call it now. We will win the league with this present group of players, so people can stop with we need 25 goals this season striker. Our front 3 scored 40 goals last season. I like that. Dale says, it's in Arsenal's best interest to let fans know now not to expect a big January move. Arsenal and Ornstein have mutually beneficial relationship. I think it's very, I don't know how anybody could sit there and say Ornstein doesn't know what he's talking about at this stage. Like, it's just, people don't like what they're hearing. And if you just, again, take Ornstein out of the equation, Arsenal couldn't even buy David Raya. So what makes you think we're going to turn around and spend 60 million or 120 million on 2 players in January without selling anyone? It's very unlikely that we'll be able to do it. So, and also I always felt like it was a little unlikely that Nketiah would go, because here's my thing is, I think 2 things can be true. The Arsenal aren't expecting to bring in anybody significant, but equally, like, if somebody was to, like, let's say, put 50 million down for Eddie or ESR, then potentially we could go out there and get Tony, but I don't think Arsenal are going to put that out there. They may really like Tony. I do think there's interest in Tony. I do think that he's a striker that they would want, but financially, we're just not in a situation right now where I don't think Arsenal could plan for it unless something special happened. Like, again, we were able to get 50 million for Nketiah, or somebody would come in for ESR. So I just think it's a little bit of like they're not expecting to. like Ornstein didn't 100% rule it out, but he said like basically like don't hold your breath. And I wouldn't hold my breath either. You know, being interested in a player and being financially ready to bring that player in are two different things. Unfortunately. Jordan says, but the reality, Jess, is he's a journalist. He will report what he knows now, but things can change in January and Arsenal decide that they will, and he reports different. Yeah, but still, like if he had turned around and just said that Arsenal are interested in Ivan Toney, you guys would be lapping it up, despite, you know, it's like, so if it's good news, it's 100% true, and you guys don't think about the opposite, that it could not happen. It's literally only because it's not what we want to hear. But he's probably right, you know, because put two and two together. And like I just said, Arsenal can have interest in Ivan Toney, have longstanding interest in Neto, maybe want to bring those players in January, but financially they don't see a way to be able to do it. So they're just going to put it out there that it's unlikely, or they don't think it's going to happen. Like after spending 200 million in the summer, I think it would be very difficult to see Arsenal going straight back into the next window and saying, you know, now I'm going to spend 60 million without actually selling somebody. So all I'm saying is that, are you surprised that this is potentially coming out? Like, did you 100% think that we were going to bring somebody in, or no? Like, interest and actually being financially ready to bring somebody in are two different things. So I don't know. Don't shoot the messenger. But I don't want to hear anybody talking about Orny bombs and look at Ornstein, he's the goat, and all this kind of stuff. When he says we're going to buy somebody next summer, because I'm going to bring this right back and say, well, what about the other side of the coin? Maybe Arsenal are feeding him information that's false. Come on, you guys, be serious. Like, let's be serious, people, for like 1 second. You know, like, oh, Animashes says Tony is Chelsea bound, but it depends on where Arsenal find themselves in January. So I basically like. I think like if we were to be able to sell somebody, maybe, you know, if you have FFP problems, and that's the main thing that was cited by David Ornstein here, is I don't think, like he says, Arsenal do not have much budget or desire to do significant business in January. And then he spoke about it's more of a matter of what FFP rules enable them to do. So essentially, like, you know, read between the lines here, people. They don't have the money. We have some FFP problems, so we're not really planning on doing anything. But, you know, maybe if we sold a player, you know, for a decent amount of money, we'd consider it. But, you know, January is a very difficult window to get big business done. And I know that the Enzo deal, I think it was done in January, and maybe a deal here or there have changed how people view the January window. But the January window has always kind of been just to like to just get a little player here and there in because you got an injury. It's really not it's not a big business window. So I'm not that surprised that it doesn't feel like Arsenal are going to go out there and spend big, unless something were to happen on the other end and players were to maybe go or something like that. You know, so it's unfortunate to hear it so early, but you know, Arsenal have enough players in their team to figure out what to do internally. Like I told you guys the other day, that people were like, we 100% have to bring in a midfielder. I don't know if we have to bring in a midfielder like in January. I think we have internal solutions that are more than good enough to get us over the and play well. Arteta said, I think this is in one of his interviews, that I found this interesting as well. Let me see if I can pull it out. I got it. He said, and we're going to talk to this leads me into like the most important part, I think, is he said, will getting Saka, Martinelli, and Jesus on the pitch together help? He said, yeah, obviously we had injuries and we had the availability that we have, and we miss other players as well in midfield that are very, very important. So, you know, he basically alluding to the fact that like we haven't seen our best front three play together, and we're also missing players in midfield that are very important. We know who that is. It's Thomas Partey. So let's see how Arsenal look with Rice and Partey and Odegaard as their midfield three, with Zinchenko. Because again, even at the beginning of the season, we didn't have Zinchenko. It was Partey was there. He's playing right back. Zinchenko's not there because Timber gets injured. Now we have, hopefully, Zinchenko there. We have Partey there. We have Rice and Odegaard. And we have our best front three. Let's see what that looks like first. And if we're still having the same problems, then yeah, maybe we're fucked. Maybe we're in trouble, maybe whatever. But we still have only scored one less goal than we have at this point last season. We're not dying. It's just the one stage that I just feel like we don't have is plan B to get the ball up to and to score the easy goals. But let's see how things, because you have to make you have to see what the internal situation is like. And we have players that are being underutilized right now. I don't think Trossard is being used enough. I don't think Vieira is being used enough. I don't think Kivior is being used enough. I think we need to figure out what Kai is going to be doing. I'd tell you guys something funny about Kai too. You guys are gonna laugh at me. But yeah, I just think internal solutions, we still have a level to go up with players that we're missing at the beginning of the season. Let's see what that looks like first, and then panic if we're not, scoring as many goals as we feel like we should, or creating as many chances as we feel like we should. But yeah, we're, Ornstein put it out there. We've seen that one before. We've seen Arsenal not looking to do any business in January. We've seen that from him in the past, and it's been true. We've seen Ornstein, they're not expected to bring any more players into. We've seen this before. So I would not be surprised if he's being briefed by the club, and the club is just like, get over it. Andrew says Arteta needs to play them in their best positions. Deadstone says, I think Timber was the final piece, but the injury really screwed that. But Timber comes back and will be so strong. Timber was meant to play a very big role this season. I believe that with my whole heart. Like, I think that guy was meant to come in and really be like a starter. On which side, that's up to you to decide. I've had many debates. People feel like obviously he's going to replace Zinchenko, but I don't know if I agree with that because he was brought in to play right back. And we know that from the beginning of the summer. He also started playing in preseason at right back and then moved over to the left. Zinchenko wasn't there. So until I see Zinchenko fit and Timber fit and Timber is playing over Zinchenko, I'm going to hold my cards close to my chest on that one. But I think Timber was meant to play a big role. I think that's part of the reason why we saw Thomas Partey play right back, is potentially because Arteta wanted to see a more midfield-like player on that right-hand side and shift the dynamic at the back a little bit. I don't buy this. I don't buy everything about like this whole Gabriel was just dropped because of I think he was we had started playing a certain way. He wanted to see what a midfielder looked like in that position. It didn't work out because Thomas Partey is not the same. But could it have been that? I don't know, y'all. I don't know. Because I don't know, y'all. I don't know. Timber was supposed to play a big role. I can't wait to see what he's like with the team. Jordan says sell Ramsdale in January and add a quality winger, striker, and midfielder. I wouldn't sell Ramsdale in January unless he was like definitely dying to go. Yeah. Imbitarera says Arsenal injury crisis is starting soon. We already went through an injury crisis, by the way. Before the Spurs match, there was tons of injury crisis. I remember doing the streams, so we've already had an injury crisis and we went through it pretty well. So we have to find internal solutions throughout the season. You can't always go into the market every single time. Would I love for us to be able to go into the market every single time? Yes, I would. But the idea that we've been through an injury crisis already and we've been able to get through it relatively well. So I'm not that worried about the injury part of it because we didn't have Jesus for a certain amount of time. We didn't have Partey for a certain amount of time. Like Trossard went out, Martinelli went out, like Saka then went out. Like we've already kind of been through it and we've been able to get by. I'm not too worried about that. I'm worried about when the stressful part of the season arrives and we just need to score the easy goals. We don't have anybody that scores the easy goals. We don't. We need the perfect touches. We need 6, 7 passes. We need to, do the extra pass instead of just putting it in the back of the net. I think about Gabriel Jesus trying to dribble through 4 or 5 Manchester City players when Rice is sitting right there on the 6, waiting for a ball to just be hit to him. We overcomplicate scoring goals sometimes, and I think that's when you kind of just need somebody that will just put it in the back of the net, you know? And sometimes we just don't have that. Boy says there aren't enough minutes to go around. You guys are talking to each other. Never mind. Johnny says Timber coming back will be like a new signing. I agree. Deadstone says, agree, Jess. Timber was Saliba backup and right back starting, in my opinion. That's what they said at the beginning. And then people kind of changed their narrative when he was playing on the left. And they're like, this was always the plan. No, it wasn't. But it worked out because Timber's just a fantastic player. But yeah. But I want to ask you guys, do you think that we have enough internally to win the league? Striker wise, like taking everything into consideration, not just off of the first emotional answer, but the fact that we haven't seen Jesus, Saka, and Martinelli play together, but for 14 minutes this season, and they scored 40 goals last season, which is a lot for those, for 3 players. Arteta's intimating that we haven't had maybe one of our better midfielders in. If we add Partey to the midfield, take Havertz out, and play the midfield that everybody wants to see, does that change things? Does Havertz have a role to play, as somebody that has a little bit more height, they can hold the ball up? And, what do you guys think about that? Because I think our first emotional answer is no, it's not enough. But we haven't even seen the best 11 play yet, really. So maybe it could be. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Especially if we're not giving up as many goals, because people also are thinking about the other side of the coin, where a lot of times we had to score 3 or 4 goals a game because we were giving up 2. So if we're not giving up as many goals, you actually don't have to score as many either. So I want to know what you guys have to say about that. Shane says we haven't had a decent striker since Pierre. Aubameyang. Ornstein has not said that we're not going to get a striker. What he's saying is we're not getting one in January. He actually said that he feels like the next piece of business that Arsenal will do is a striker. So for people that were really upset about the conversations that we were having just a couple of weeks ago around Tony and is he the right guy, there were a lot of people that were saying, I don't want Tony because that means you can't get Osimhen, you can't get this person, you can't get this person. Another part of the other side of the coin that Ornstein is putting out there is, yeah, Arsenal have some FFP problems. They're not going to be doing any significant business in January, but their next big signing that is probably on the schedule is a striker. So if you miss out on Tony, which I think in January, if you don't get him, you miss out on him. Hopefully somebody that we would be fighting against for a bigger striker target is out of the equation. Because if Chelsea buy Tony, then that's one less team you have to worry about for Evan Ferguson or Osimhen or whoever you want, whoever Arsenal are looking at, because they're looking at somebody. We don't know who it is, but they're looking at somebody, So it could end up being something that works in our favor if we can get the front 3 from last season to really start clicking. First of all, we haven't seen it play. Then, maybe you can go for somebody that's, a little bit more, whatever the club are actually really looking for. Me, I'm more, my personal opinion is I would like to see us go for the now. And if we could buy Tony for 50, 60 million, I would do it. If financially we can't do it, then there's nothing you could do. There's nothing I could say to the club or be upset with the club by. We don't have the money. We don't have the money. But if we did have the money, I would like to see us go ahead and buy the striker now, because you just never know where you're going to be. And I actually like Tony, I think, a lot more than other people do. I think he's slightly disrespected by our fan base, and holding on to an idea of a striker that may not even be checking for us, for me, is a little bit like, come on. But for people that are not interested in Tony, this should be music to your ears. You should be celebrating and clapping and excited about this, because basically what Ornstein is saying is that there's a striker is going to come in, but not in January. If Tony is gone, then maybe you'll get the striker that you really want, you know? So yeah. Here to there says neither City nor Liverpool have a mediocre player the level of Havertz or Nketiah playing significant minutes. Yeah. Mark says rather have Tony over Ferguson. But the one thing I will say about that here to there is even though they don't, look at where we are in the table. You know, I do think that like I am pleasantly surprised at how well we've done starting Nketiah and Havertz for a lot of the games because Havertz hasn't quite clicked yet, and Nketiah is not really the guy. So as much as we're like, oh, City would never have a player like this. Well, look at where we are on the table. That's how good we are. So, and again, we've had a game now without Saka, a huge game, games without Martinelli, games without Jesus, games without Partey, and we've still been pretty freaking good. So, I think also you can look at it from the flip side and say, well, damn, they don't have a player like Nketiah, and look at what we've done. Because honestly, Man City, they lost to team with Nketiah leading the line. Like, you know, so there you go. So there's a positive side to that as well. Shane says Tony is a baller, period. I think he's much better than people give him credit for. I've seen the side of like he's English, so he's overrated. And then I've seen the, oh well, you know, he's underrated because people want the exotic thing all the time, and there's good players in the league that could improve us. So I can see both sides of the coin. Like I feel like if I was talking to DJ Harry right now, he'd be telling me that Tony is the guy because he always feels like we're a little bit snobbish. I feel that way sometimes too, that we're a little snobbish when it comes to players that could instantly improve us and get us over the line now, because we're always looking at the future and the exotic choice that's like the perfect signing. That may not even want to come to us. So let's see. Off the radar says Tony has drive and hunger. Johnny says, I'm glad Tony is being pushed. Let's see. Dow says, haven't seen you on the terrace in a while. I'll be back on the terrace soon. I promise you guys. Philip says, yes, we have enough to win the league. It all comes down to injury luck, in my opinion. One serious Rodri injury changes everything. Likewise for us. Also, Timber averaged 90 passes a game last season. I think he was going to be Zinchenko on the right. That's how I truly feel. I think we were going to have a center back option and a midfield option on both sides. Timber and Zinchenko are the midfield options, and Kivior and Ben White are the center back options. That's kind of how I felt about how things were going. I miss Timber so much. Here to there says, yes, Jess, our center backs, Rice, White, elite. We just need solid players filling in, and Nketiah, Havertz minutes. Case in point, Jorginho versus City. So, yeah, that's kind of what Ornstein is saying. It is what it is, y'all. Like, we'll see what happens in January, but like, basically, when I'm not getting my hopes up unless we sell somebody. I just don't see how we would bring somebody in, even just based on like the FFP problems that we have. But internally, we have solutions. I feel like I want to back the front three that played so well last season, that they can replicate their numbers from last season. And if we do see Thomas Partey come into the midfield, which Arteta has basically intimated that we've been missing him in midfield, that the midfield of Rice and Partey and Odegaard will be used quite often, and it'll be the midfield that creates more chances, gives us the best platform for our attackers to attack. I got to tell y'all something funny now. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. So I don't know if she's watching or not, but we have a group chat that I started like maybe 3 months ago or something. And the funniest thing happens in those group chats. I'm sure you guys have group chats on WhatsApp and stuff like that. And basically we got to talking yesterday, and my friend sent me a comp of Havertz playing for one for Chelsea and one for Leverkusen. I was just like, I don't know if I was just, I don't know. I wasn't drinking, so you guys can't say I was under the influence, but she fully got me gassed on this whole, like, we just need to give him more time. And like, if this player is in there, then we can reach him. And I know Chelsea fans are saying like that stage 3, like looking at old comps of him at Leverkusen. And I was like, I fully gaslit myself into thinking this guy can be special for us. I was like, I couldn't believe how fast like it happened. All I had to do was watch a couple comps and she was in my ear saying like, all you have to do is da, 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 da. But that being said, if you guys want the comps, you guys can get fully gaslit as well. I'll send them to you. But because we started talking about can he pass, and I was like, well, yeah, I think he has a good passing range, but he hasn't used it in 3 years, like because he's been at Chelsea playing 9. And when you look back at the passes that he used to do for Leverkusen, it's like if we could get 70% of that player, we have a good player, because that player was like world class. It's insane how good he was at Leverkusen and how 3 years later, like how big of the slide was, because if you put 21-year-old Havertz up against the 21-year-olds that are now like highly rated, he'd probably still be like top 3 or 4. That's how good this guy was. Like, it's crazy. So I fully gaslit myself into believing that there's a player in there and we just need to give him time. And then I was like watching clips of him play for Arsenal and I was like, see, it's there. Like, yeah, I fully did it to myself, y'all. I hope you guys find that, like, you find a little bit of humor and stuff like that, because really it's football and I want Havertz to come good. I'm not 100% seeing it, but those comps gave me a little bit of something to hold on to. So I'm going to hope that the guy does it, because if we get 80% of that player is real good. That player's real good. Maybe it takes a year to get him back, but if we have to wait a whole year to get him back, it might be worth it, because that player, that 21-year-old playing for Leverkusen, was fantastic. I don't know what happened to that guy, but I fully did it to myself. So yeah, you guys can make fun of me, but I hope you guys find some humor in that, because I could not believe what I was saying, like what I was feeling. I was like, we have this player in our team. Then I realized, yeah, I've been watching him. He doesn't look like that player. But that being said, you guys, what I will say is that, like, there's a player in there and we just need to give him time. But really, maybe we do. Maybe we do. I don't know. I'm trying to hold out hope. But going into the Chelsea game, I want to see Partey, Rice, and Odegaard. That's what I want to see. Trossard, Saliba, and Saka. Arteta's kind of given us a little bit of an update on those 3. Essentially what he said was that, the 3 of them were out for international break. Saka definitely wants to play. They're hoping that Saliba's injury is not long-term, and they wanted to see how everybody trained and stuff today. You know how they do with the inside training. They're really clever with trying not to show players that have injury speculation over their head to keep people guessing or whatever. But if I had to guess, if Saliba and Saka will start, I think Saliba and Saka will start. Saliba played the game of his life against Holland, Manchester City. This was a very good opportunity for him to take a little bit of a break in this France have pretty much gotten everything sewed up. Like, they didn't need Saliba in there to qualify for the Euros or anything. So Saliba, his spot is safe. He could rest his toe and be ready to go against Chelsea. I'm pretty sure Saliba is going to start. Saka, I'm hoping he was kind of in the back fuzzy somewhere in that inside training. I think he'll play. Trossard, he's not going to start anyway. We have Martinelli, but having him on the bench would be nice. And so, Arteta was like in his usual way, very closed, tight-lipped about the injuries, but optimistic that they'll play. And so I think they will. But it's not much of an injury update because he didn't say for sure, but he also didn't rule anybody out. Now, all we're really hoping at this stage is that everybody came back from international break unscathed. The only player that I'm worried about just a little bit is because he did speak about players playing across the world and all this kind of stuff, and the minutes in their legs and how the travel is going to hurt their energy levels or whatever. First player I thought about was Gabriel Jesus, who I think Arteta's being quite careful with off of the back of that knee injury. He played, I think 90 minutes against Uruguay and a couple of minutes against Peru. for Brazil. And so that is the doorway for Nketiah to start against Chelsea. If I had to find one, it's Gabriel Jesus didn't come back from South America very good, or maybe can only play 70 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever. So we'll see. But this is the time to go out and play Jesus, Martinelli, and Saka if we have the ability to do so. I know Eddie didn't play. No, he did. He played like 15 minutes against whoever. But other than that, like he's kind of been chilling too. So we should have almost a fully fit squad. Unknown, you're just here for nothing. Off the radar says Nketiah is Arteta's star boy. He is, man. Johnny J says, me and my son went to see Arsenal women against Villa last weekend. I remember you told me that. It was great. 35,000 squad crowd, a nice buzz. We'll definitely go again. Well, you saw a very, very entertaining game, where Arsenal won in the final minutes off of a Beth Mead assist and Russo goal. And, so that must have been really fun to be there. I was freaking out the entire game because if we had lost that, Johnny, if we had lost that game, we would have been in full crisis. So good on, the crowd and everything getting the girls over the line because they really needed it. Here to There says everyone will play, but it's about how Arteta can rotate manager with 3 games in the next 10 days. We know we have a big week ahead of us with, the game against the Villa, which I do think is going to be a very difficult game, and it's a must-win game. Chelsea is a must-not-lose game, in my opinion. Then you have Sheffield, which is a good game to rest players, but also could end up being a banana skin if you take it too lightly. So we have a lot to think about in the next couple of games. Antenna says Arteta mind games with injuries is really taking a toll on our fans' nervousness. Yeah, he's very like deep into the mind games, and I'm just like, just tell us who's ready to go or not. Yo-Yo says Kiwi or Tommy could feature for Gabriel Magalhaes perhaps if they had less travel during the break. Yeah, there's Gabriel, who's played 90 minutes for Brazil in 2 matches coming from South America. I think, that happened in the last break and Gabriel didn't get any rest. But he was also off of the back of not starting for Arsenal for a couple of games too. So maybe it takes a toll on him, but I just feel like his fitness is always so good that he's super reliable for us. But maybe you see Tommy, I feel like you need to go in with your best center back pairing in these 2 games and potentially look at Sheffield as the game to rest Gabriel if you're going to. And I would love to see Kiwior get some minutes because I just don't understand how you go from this guy is going to change the way we play to actually this guy, does he even exist? I don't think Kiwior is a bad player. But that's kind of what we get to. It's like if Arteta doesn't play them, we start telling ourselves that the guy's not any good. And I don't really believe that. Boy says, we didn't play with a DM for years with Ozil. What are we talking about when we claim that Xhaka is not a DM? Wasn't played at DM for a majority of his contracts at Arsenal. You guys are talking about something else. I have no clue what you guys are talking about. Frank says, hey, just join the live anyway. How is you? I'm good. I can't complain. I mean, Arsenal play tomorrow, so I am feeling excited, also getting that little bit of nervousness in my stomach, like what's going to happen because it's a big game. It's a big game for Arsenal. You guys, I'm about to press, if you guys are a patron or you guys want to become a patron, I'm literally about to press, press submit or whatever for the Chelsea preview. It's been loading for a long time. And so it's now live on Patreon if you guys want to take a look at that after this. But that was very difficult for me to get up, and I hope you guys enjoy it if you guys get a chance to watch it. Here to There says, strangely, I have a lot more faith in Kiwior and Tommy than Eddie Havertz, our frontline situation. I think because they're defenders, at the very crux of the position is, can you stop players from scoring goals? And Tommy and Kiwior are very good defenders. So, at the very least, they'll be able to stop players from scoring. And then we also know that they have a decent enough technical level where they're not like back there bumbling around with the ball. With Eddie, I just feel like even the part of the game that he is supposed to do very well, which is poaching, scoring goals, since he's been playing more minutes, his numbers have dropped significantly in terms of his his conversion rates, everything has went down. The more he plays, the more obvious it becomes that he's a backup, where when he plays less games and just fills in, he does quite well. And so I think when you get to like the bare bones of a position and you're like, what is this person supposed to be doing for me? Even if you can't do any of the link up or any of that, if he's scoring goals, it's you can accept it. But once the goals dry up, Eddie Nketiah hasn't scored a goal since Fulham, by the way. That was a long time ago. Yes, he's won penalties for us, but you can also make an argument that if Jesus was starting in the same positions, that we would have created more goals. So even if we didn't get that penalty, we would have just won the game anyway. So with Eddie, he's not even doing like the bare bones part of the position correctly. And then you have Havertz that nobody really likes anyway. So, it's pretty easy to see why you'd feel that way. To be honest. Yo-Yo says, would love to see Kai come off the bench and do a Kanu. Yo, not do a Kanu. I think if he's gonna score a goal, it's gonna be off the bench. And I hope he's coming off of the bench because right now that's kind of I think the best role for him right now. We need to go in with our strongest midfield. But again, I've gaslit myself into believing there's a player in there. So he could do a good, he could get himself some good credit in the bank for me to really believe that and start really pressing down on that and making that my narrative. If he can come off of the bench and put one in the back of the net against Chelsea. Go on, Kai. Haraya? I hope I didn't botch that so badly. Says, I hope Arteta plays our strongest team, no Havertz or Eddie. Please, we cannot underestimate Chelsea. Based on his press conference, I don't think he's underestimating Chelsea at all. He actually kissed their ass quite a bit, which pissed me off. No, but he basically said the same things that I said in my preview. I said, Chelsea, their underlying metrics say that they're a top 4 team. They're not a top 4 team because they're not clinical, but they're the third best defense in the league, just behind us in Manchester City in terms of their XG conceded. And they don't give up that many goals. Every underlying metric says that they're a much better side than what we think they are. They're not mid-table, and Arteta basically said that they deserve more points than what they've gotten. Now, they actually deserve exactly what they got because they haven't been clinical when they needed to be. So, I don't think Arteta is going to underestimate them. I don't actually think that in his mind, he playing Havertz in midfield is intentionally playing a weaker side. I think he puts Havertz in there for certain circumstances based on the opposition and how they're going to play a game. So if you see Havertz, I don't think it's because he underestimates them. I think it's because he sees that option as something that can exploit something that they are trying to do tactically or with the players that they have. That being said, I still want to see Partey. Okay, I'm done. I just want to see Rice and Partey and Odegaard just once. With not even just once. I want to see that front six. I want to see them play for 4 games. As long as nobody gets injured, I want to see them play for 4 games. Rice, Partey, Odegaard, Saka, Jesus, Martinelli. 4 games. Give them 4 games. Let's see how it looks. Because we need the data, y'all. We need the data, y'all, to see if we're good or not. We need to see it. So, I mean, if we're really good or not, because we know we're good. But again, I think there's a subtle difference there where I don't think Arteta is intentionally playing a weaker side by putting in Kai Havertz. In his mind, he's seeing Havertz as a way to unlock certain things in our team or counterbalance something that the other team is trying to do. Hopefully he doesn't see those against Chelsea. Ocampo says, will Jorginho play because he knows Chelsea? Saliba has a toe injury. Yeah, I think Jorginho could potentially play if he doesn't think that, because remember, Partey did travel to the US and he did jog around quite a bit, but that's, as somebody that's done that trip quite a bit, it's hard on the body, going from the US to the UK. It's not the same as a 1 hour flight to, wherever the fuck, Italy, Germany, whatever. It's not as easy. It's a 10-hour journey and it's 10 hours both ways, depending on where you go. Like it could be 6, 7, 8, but it's still harder on the body. So for somebody that spent quite a bit of time out and then only played the 20 minutes against Manchester City, he may not feel like he's fit enough to start the game. But like I said, if we don't see Partey, I would like to see Jorginho and Partey split the time again, like we saw against Manchester City. I think that that's fine. I actually have less of a problem with Jorginho than a lot of other people do. And that's surprising, I think, based on my like original feeling of him signing for us. If you guys don't remember, you guys weren't here. Complete head loss, head on Pluto, saying all types of stuff, blacking out, just could not believe that we were signing this guy. But I actually see a really good, useful squad player that Arteta can only get the best out of if he sets up the team around him properly. If he continues to play him in a single pivot with whatever behind him, like, and nobody next to him that can run, he's never going to be useful to us. But the way that he was utilized against Manchester City is the way that we need to use him from here on out. You need to have Declan Rice or Partey next to him. He cannot have like Zinchenko pinching in next to him and Granit Xhaka and Vieira. Some of the worst Jorginho games that I've seen for him at Arsenal was that midfield, and we did it twice. So just play the right people around Jorginho and it'll be fine. Actually put him right up there with like Tommy and Trossard for our squad players, where some people put him a lot lower down with like Eddie and Kai. And I'm just like, I just think Jorginho is much better than what people give him credit for. But like with most players that are not perfect, players, they need other players around them to help them unlock their best features and limit the flaws a little bit more. Jorginho is definitely one of those. Yo-Yo says, agreed. Glad we have retained Partey and Georgie. I didn't support the calls for El Neni and Lavia supporting Rice this season. Fair enough. I said I thought we'd be able to get by with Jorginho if we sold Partey for 40 million and we use that money to buy a different type of midfielder. I think I was very specific about that. I think people felt like I was saying, oh my God, like Jorginho and Rice would just be enough and we just don't do anything else. Like everything was kind of like based on getting a different type of midfielder to play left center mid, or something else like a Fofana or something like that. But having Partey and Jorginho at this stage is very useful for Arsenal, and I would like to see it continue for the rest of the season. Philip says Jorginho is added to the underplayed list, in my opinion. The fact that he didn't start versus Tottenham or Lens was a mistake. Also, seeing Nelson not getting as many starts with Martinelli out is also a bit heartbreaking. Yeah, I actually haven't thought about that at all. Like the fact that Nelson really didn't get the starts that I think we thought he would get with Martinelli out, he's definitely not going to get those minutes now. And again, it just kind of like underlines that question once again. Why did we give him the contract if he's not going to be trusted? Saksham says Nelson deserves more game time. I don't know why he's not getting any game time. I think it might have, I don't know if it was Philip. I'm not sure. Somebody on Twitter. I feel like it's somebody that comes like that is in the chat a lot of times, but was saying that like it could just be as simple as Arteta trusts the players that are better off the ball players than the ones that are not. And so those players play more, meaning he trusts Eddie off the ball more than he trusts Trossard. And that's why Trossard doesn't play as much, because we can't say it's because Eddie's a better player than Trossard. That's not true. But maybe because Eddie presses better or something. But even Eddie's pressing, like the amount of times that he runs into people, he should have been sent off a couple times. So, it's crazy. Shane says probably cup games, Jess. Yeah, I felt like he deserved a Premier League start, or, the start against Tottenham. I thought that was a good chance to show that he trusted Nelson to play, but he clearly doesn't, and that's disappointing. Ocampo says, with Partey going for AFCON, do you think we need cover like Douglas Luiz because also Neni is going to Egypt? No, you play Jorginho. You play Jorginho for a month. It's what, 2 games? It's 2 games, I think people were saying. You can play Jorginho for 2 games. Plus, Ghana is not going to be gone very long. I don't think. So, I think it's about 2 games where Thomas will be gone. So I don't think we need to buy anybody. Not in January, and definitely not Douglas Luiz. I think I'm very against the Douglas Luiz signing. I just feel like it's keeping you at the same water level. Like, it's not raising you any. It's just keeping you afloat. And it's just another player that in a year or so people will want gone because we'll want to upgrade upon him. So I would just say trust Georgie for the 2 games, or maybe Havertz will be world class by then and we can play Rice and Havertz, like in my mind, like when I gaslit myself into believing the comps. So there you go. Let's see what else you guys are saying. We're going to get out of here soon. Ivy says no Douglas Luiz. It's a vibe signing. It's like a vibe signing. Yeah, for me, it feels like a waste. He just signed a new deal. Like there's just I don't see it. No, it reeks. Unknown here as a Tottenham fan. Why? I don't know. It's like every game is stat padding game for the usual suspects. Don't know what you're talking about, but okay. Where are we like saying we stat pad is like weird stuff. Like we're not stat padding. And like the thing is your team is stat padding because you guys have played the 3 worst teams in the league. And that's where you guys score the majority of your goals. So you guys are actually stat padding, not us, but good job. Ruben says Eddie is really raw for his age. He's 24, y'all. I just want to put that out there again. Like he's not a kid. He's 24. Like we're no longer talking about a Haaland, like academy kid. We're talking about like a player, Eddie is really raw for his age, plays like a 19-year-old, but to be fair, he's only played like 1,000 minutes each season, needs to go. And like, where is the ambition? Like at 24, I'm trying to go find somewhere where I'm going to play week in, week out. Okay. Saksham says, I'd rather get Anguissa from Napoli. Anguissa was good when he was in the Premier League. I actually really liked him. Ocampo says, where do you think the Chelsea threat will come from because their attack is toothless? I actually think, first of all, this is their cup final. I said that on the preview that the entire like international break, all of their big accounts were talking about Arsenal. Reece James is going to play. Watch out, Arsenal. Mudryk scored a goal against Malta. Watch out, Arsenal. This is their Man City game, where we're kind of like in the blissful haze off of the back of that Manchester City game where we proved that we could beat them. It's not as long standing, but over the last like 4 seasons, they really have like fell away and kind of like they've struggled to beat us. So they're going to be really trying as hard as they can to beat us. And so I think if they get one chance against Arsenal, they'll score. Like it feels like one of those, right? They're going to be trying really hard. But the threat will come from, I think Sterling will play. I can't imagine why Pochettino would not start Sterling. I think, you probably want to put him on the same side as Saka because he'll be reliable defensively. You want somebody that's going to track back and help, whatever defender. Because if they put Cucurella or Caldwell back there on Saka, they're cooked. So you're going to want to put the left winger is going to have to be somebody you can rely upon. And that would be Sterling because Mudryk is not going to come back. He's not. Like, that's just not his game. So I would imagine Sterling. And once Sterling gets into the box, it's peak, like, because the guy has such good tight dribbling skills and you just don't want to stick a leg out because he'll get a penalty. I think a lot of their threat can come from him. Other than that, they do create chances. They do create chances. I do think they waste them, but again, they'll be clinical against us. That's how it happens. But I think a lot of it will come if they, use Sterling. I think Sterling is somebody that could give us a hard time. Everybody else, it's up in the air because Madueke is good, but he's not clinical. Cole Palmer is kind of like newish. We know Conor Gallagher's not really a goal threat like that. Caicedo's not really a goal threat like that. Enzo is not really a goal threat like that. And Nicholas Jackson is like a bag of chaos. So it's hard to see, but I would imagine if I'm Pochettino and I'm thinking about trying to stop Saka if I can, but also hurt Ben White and have to have Saka come back, I'm going to use Sterling. So that's what I think. Sterling is still a very good player. I don't know if people actually thought he wasn't, but he is. So yeah. Yo-Yo says Gallagher has been their best player offensively. Adam Ashes says Arsenal struggled to beat City, but guess what happened 2 weeks ago? Yeah. And that's why I don't think we're going to take them lightly. And I don't think Man City took us lightly. I don't think it was, oh, we're just going to be Arsenal. So whatever. I don't think Arsenal, are going to take Chelsea easily or anything like that. But I think it's a different game than it was last season. And we only beat them 1-0 last season away from home. They don't give away that many chances. They're pretty good defense. They're good defensively. And this is their game. Like if they want to show that they're going, this is their first test, like we're their first test. I think for the majority of the games that they played, like except for Liverpool, which was like very early on in the season, like I was still in England when they played them. So that must have been like the first game of the season when they played against Liverpool. Everybody else has kind of been like mid-table-y teams, I feel like, or lower. So this is like their big test. Like they're playing Arsenal. What's going to happen? And so they're going to, at home, they're going to want to show that it's not the same Chelsea. And so we should expect a really difficult game. We can still win though. Philip says, that was me about pressing. Okay, yeah, so I thought it was you. As fans, we tend to make lineups thinking of on the ball, but Arteta must put pressing very high up the list because we are one of the best at it in Europe. And so it was you. So I'm glad you said that because you could take credit for that thought because I definitely didn't think of it. But he may just view Eddie as a better off the ball player than Trossard and Nelson. And so picked him based on that. So that's a really good point I think you made. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yo-Yo says Palmer has been good, but Chelsea improved when Poch got the midfield balance right. Here to there says Chelsea have a good defense, low scoring game, probably decided by a set piece or a mistake at the back press. I said 1-0 to the Arsenal. So that's the scoreline I went with. I think we all know it's going to be a very, very tight game. Like you said, can be decided by a penalty, a mistake, a set piece, something like that. So I agree. I agree with you. Let's see. You get a couple more comments. Hiraya says Sterling versus Lichtsteiner, good old times, isn't it? Like the worst times of my life, but yes. Oh my gosh, Lichtsteiner. I still think people like forgot that guy played for us. Maybe they blacked out or like blocked it out of their memory. You know how people like block things out of their memory when they're traumatized? It's kind of like one of those like, oh, he played for us. I forgot. Boy says City are claiming that losing KDB is good enough excuse for Holland having 0.0 XG. Yeah, you guys are going back and forth now, but you guys, super love the show today. Glad you guys showed up on a Friday. I know Fridays are weird ones because people have like things to do in lives and stuff. So it's really nice that you guys like join the stream. I really appreciate it. We'll be live an hour before by we, I mean me, live before the Chelsea game tomorrow, 1 hour before. That's when pre-match vibes starts and you guys can get your notification now. You guys can just go over to the stream now and set your notification. Hopefully you get it. And then also set your notification for player ratings because it's up. And so I'll see you guys tomorrow an hour before kickoff. And if you guys are a patron, the full Chelsea preview is up now. And, if you want to become a patron, the link is in the description, but you don't have to. It's not like, it is what it is if you don't want to be a patron, but we do have good content over there. Previews, rewatches, the post-match shows are on there. All that stuff is on there. So I would really love it if you join me over there. But enjoy the rest of your Friday, guys. And I will see you guys bright and early for me for the Chelsea game. All right. Bye, y'all. Love y'all. See ya.